Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And welcome again to another Living Chassidus wonderful event. For anyone who doesn't yet know, Baruch Hashem, we are in the midst of an amazing program called the Systematic Avodah Initiative. And tonight's Farbrengen is actually a part of that program. So the way that it works, just to give everyone a bit of context, is that the incredible women of Living Chassidus, and everyone is welcome to join, the registration is still open. They realized that coming to all of the Chassidish Yamim Tovim of Kislev without preparation and expecting the Farbrengener to give us all the inspiration and remind us what exactly happened on Tes and Yud Kislev might not be the best way to really live Chassidus. So we worked together. A huge shout out to everyone who worked on the previous edition. So it was Ariella and Sarah. And then a huge shout out to Ruta for making the current edition of our book. We've worked together to create a book of beautiful, short daily readings that not only relate to the history of what's the upcoming Yom Tov, but they also have a thoughtful and insightful question after every day's reading that you can then feel connected and you can then work towards connecting with the upcoming Yom Tov and with Chassidus and your personal Avodas Hashem. So, as part of the Systematic Avodah Initiative, we do this daily reading and people join. Baruch Hashem, we have a beautiful group going now that is doing their daily reading. They prepare, they do hachana for the upcoming Yom Tov, and they connect to their readings. And through that, we make it enticing, not just for the Nefesh Elokis, but also for the Nefesh Bahamis. So every person that does their daily reading and does at least one personal, private, between you and Hashem, journal entry in your Living Chassidus journal, every single time between Farbrengen and Farbrengen, we award you with an amazing prize. So in the past, we've given all kinds of beautiful prizes. We've given sets of Svarim. We've given a small and gorgeous Bluetooth speaker. We've given matches for Shabbos and a match tray for your Shabbos set. All kinds of beautiful gifts that are helpful, useful, and exciting also for the Nefesh Bahamis. And tonight, for every single person that has done their daily reading and has done at least one journal entry, we want to gift them with an incredible feat. It is one of the most impressive Svarim I've seen translated. And I want to give a huge, huge thank you. Hold on one second. I want to give a huge thank you to Rabbi Shimon Markel, who not only does he love and support Living Chassidus by sending us Svarim as soon as he translates them, but he also co-sponsored tonight's gift. So every single person who did their daily reading from the last Farbrengen to this Farbrengen will be getting a Gate of Unity, Shara Yichud. It's a linear Hebrew to English translation of Shara Yichud of the Mitteler Rebbe. It is an amazing feat to have translated. I don't know if you can see it properly, but it has the Hebrew and the English. And we have copies for every one of you who has worked so hard. And I also want to share that in the past at Living Chassidus, a few of us have had a chavrusa to learn Shara Yichud. And in the past, we did use this version, which originally was when my husband was a bacher in yeshiva with Rabbi. Anyway, so it was originally this version, and now we get to Mit Hashem continue the learning and continue our depth and understanding of the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus. So you have that waiting for you, and I want to mention the names of everyone who earned it. So we'll start with that. Oh, give me one second. I apologize. did not work. Okay, I guess I will mention them after because my WhatsApp is not able to process the poll for some reason. I do know that there were 14 amazing people 15 who earned the prize. So a huge mazel tov and kol hakavod to every single one of you. Also, tonight is L'schus Refuah Shlema for, I just posted that as well, for the Shlucha Henya Bas Bracha Devar Leah. May we hear incredible, miraculous, and amazing news, and may we all celebrate with her amazing, miraculous Refuah Shlema right now. And with that said, let's introduce the great speaker that we have tonight. Tonight, we're actually only on Zoom. We usually have in person and /or Zoom, but tonight we're only on Zoom because our Farbrengener tonight is Rabbi Mendel Markel, and he's a shliach of the Rebbe in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is the outreach and events coordinator for the Chabad of Western Pennsylvania, and a teacher and mashpia in Lubavitch Center of Pittsburgh. He comes from a known family of Chassidic scholars, mashpiyim, and authors in books of Chassidus and halacha. And not only that, but for everyone who remembers Rabbi Benjamin Walters, who spoke for us in the past, Rabbi Benjamin Walters learned the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus and learned Chassidus in general as a bacher with Rabbi Markel's father, Rabbi Yossi Markel. And it's very, very exciting to have all the Markel support, one donating the book and one here speaking for us, and we have a great zchus to have them. So thank you very much, and I'll pass the mic on to him.
Okay, everyone can hear me good? Okay, excellent. So first of all, it's a great honor and pleasure, Bichlal, anytime that you get to Farbrengen with other Yidden and to share words of Chassidus, share, increase in together in the idea of Mola Aris Dea Savaya, together our understanding of the Eibishter, strengthening it. Especially in such a month, the month of Kislev, a Chassidish month, like was mentioned already, that even right from the beginning, we start off, we have Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and then going into Tes and Yud Kislev, Yutes, Chaf, Chanukah. So even though we're not yet quite upon Tes and Yud, I think we can start out by saying Good Yom Tiv. It's the whole month is a Yom Tiv, and traditionally we start off Farbrengen also by saying L'chaim, L'chaim, L'rachem. Oftentimes when I Farbrengen, I'm coming a little bit from left field, because very often there's a crowd that's expecting more stories of inspiration, which is all good. That's good things also. Mises, stories, maybe history, and not so much a focus on Avodah. So I was very happy to hear that this is a group that has a focus on Avodah, because I'm going to be talking about Avodah. When we look at the working title for the Farbrengen, so to speak, it's and all flesh will perceive. So I want to focus on the words all and flesh. Actually, I want to focus also on will perceive. You know what? Let's add the and also. And means and it will be in the times of Mashiach. All means all of us, really all the world, but with the leadership of every single Jew. And we'll skip flesh for a second, but will perceive means will understand, will see, like in a chachma as opposed to bina, which bina is a way of understanding a logical thing. Chachma is an intuitive knowledge; it's something you just know. Now we add the word flesh, that it's not just an intellectual understanding, but rather kipshute, when a Jew goes in the street and looks in the street, it's obvious that that tree is Eibishter, that the rock is Eibishter, that everything is that other human being is Eibishter. So this is really the concept of this week's Farbrengen, is the idea of everybody perceiving, and it's idea that this is not something that this is something that's shaykh to now, to here and now, and the way it's accomplished is through his baininus, which we'll explain more about the idea of his baininus. It's sometimes in English, it's sometimes called contemplation and sometimes meditation. None of these are really a proper explanation of what his baininus is. But his baininus, if we're to use these English words, it's deep. Well, let's use the words of the Sha'ar Yichud. It's iyun, right? Iyun means going over something over and over again, right? Going over and over again about the facts and details about the Eibishter, so until the point where it becomes part of us, and until we keep adding these details so that they go from just being a logical thing, a logical explanation, to where this is something that's just clearly obvious to us. So there's a few points that I want to make here. A, his baininus is an obligation on every single Jew. It's not something cool and something that just each of the Masmid did and Avram Mayer did and Zalman Zezmer did. It's not just a cool thing for Yechidi Segula, for special people of merit. His baininus is an actual obligation. Furthermore, according to the Rambam, it's maybe you can say the second most important mitzvah under Emunah, but it's actually the mitzvah of Emunah is not under his count of 613. And it's actually comes as the first most important mitzvah of the actual counted mitzvahs. So the mitzvah of his baininus, also by the way known as Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, this is the commandment of doing his baininus, which we'll talk about more later. But this is not just what the most important mitzvah, but the mitzvah of his baininus is a mitzvah upon which all other mitzvahs rely. The effectiveness of everything else we do, the effectiveness of our Shabbos, the effectiveness of our tefillah, of our Torah, hinges on the degree of our his baininus. As we'll see, the Alter Rebbe explains that obviously each person to the maximum of their own capability, that obviously each person has their own strengths and weaknesses, and the Eibishter put them here dafka with those strengths and weaknesses, because that's the way that they're supposed to do his baininus, is using dafka that mix of who they are, and that's why that unique neshama comes down to this world. The third thing is, so A, it's an obligation. B, it is of the utmost importance of an obligation. It's not just even more than just obviously we know how important tefillin and Shabbos candles and tzitzis, but this is a mitzvah upon which all these others hinge. And C, the mitzvah of his baininus is the key to revealing Mashiach. A, in our personal lives, meaning coming out of our personal galus, by doing his baininus ourselves. This is how we bring our personal geula and get out of our personal galus. And B, by now teaching everybody else how to do his baininus, is how we reach the geula hashleim v'amitis in the entire world. So anytime we're talking about something and we're looking for somebody to change perhaps their perception on something, I'll use the words of Rabbi David Vichnin, who was a very well-known mashpia in Morristown. Anybody who knows Yisrael Neach Vichnin of Mayanot, that's his son. So Rabbi David Vichnin Olav Shalom, he would sometimes say before Farbrengens, I'm going to try to channel my inner David Vichnin here. He had a very unique way of speaking. I come to this Farbrengen very worried, because I sense that maybe some of the Bachrim are just coming to have a good time. And of course, it is always good to have a good time. But the point of a Farbrengen is not just to have a good time. The point of a Farbrengen is it has to also be productive. So I'm hoping that everybody will take this to heart, and they will and we'll see to it that we will have a productive Farbrengen. This was a classic line that he used to use at the beginning of some Farbrengens when he felt the guys were coming in a little too riled up just for the l'chaim and the happy nigunim. That this is all good, but in other words, it's about the Aveda. But anytime, at least for me, anytime I'm looking to change a perception, I personally don't have any ideas of my own that it's worthwhile to change your perception over. Therefore, all the ideas that I bring are those of the Rebbeim. And therefore, we'll also use a screen share. We'll go inside on a few different pieces of Chassidus. I'll mention what they are if you want to look at them more. I have highlighted pieces that we can go, but everything here is sourced in Chassidus. These are what I'm sharing with you are not my own ideas. These are ideas from the Rebbeim, and actually, at the end, we'll have a chance to go into the actual Sha'ar Yichud, into the text with the Hebrew-English translation that actually is the gift for this for what is it for this month or whatever the time period is that it goes for. So we're going to start out with a sicha. It's a very well-known sicha from Keach Nisan that the Rebbe said on Keach Nisan. Second, okay, we should get this out here. This is Nigla. We don't need any Nigla right now. We'll do a different Farbrengen on Nigla. Minimize this. And here, Keach Nisan. Make it bigger. Okay, is that this? Everybody can see this clearly. Should I try to make it bigger? I can maybe increase the. You can see this good. Let me see if I can see where's the zoom over here. Maybe I can just do like a plus. No, that doesn't do it. Layouts.
It was right under the review. So if you click view, and then the word review is right under there.
Oh, well, over here. This here. Oh, zoom. Here we go. Zoom. Page width. Let's try that. How's that? Okay. So the Rebbe says, and now everything I'm going to be reading here is from an English one. If you want to look up the Hebrew one, the Sicha from Keach Nisan from I believe it was Tafshin Nun Aleph, is readily available online, both in English and Hebrew. All that has been done until now has been to no avail, for we are still in Galus. Moreover, we are in an inner exile in regard to our own service to the Eibishter. So note that the Rebbe is talking about we are in our personal Galus. All that I can possibly do is give the matter over to you. Now do everything you can to bring Mashiach here and now immediately. So very simple. When this Sikha came out, there were many people all obviously had different ideas on this, but it's a very simple thing. We all know if there's any human being, certainly in our generation and probably in many generations, who's close to being a Moshe Rabbeinu, that was the Rebbe. What the Rebbe is not saying is that he failed his mission, because it's like there's a story from the Gemara. It's actually a story that's brought to illustrate a point in the Sha'ar Yichud also, but it's the story of Shasik no, sorry, that's the wrong story. Shasik Rav is a whole different story. This is a story brought out in Tanya that Rabbi said, "Kegain ani beinani." For example, I'm a beinani, and they told him, "How could you say that? If you're a beinani, you're not leaving any room for anybody else to exist." So, if the Rebbe didn't achieve what his neshama came down here for, then what hope is there for anybody else? What the Rebbe is saying is very simple. And if you look at the words, he says, I did all I can do. I did what I'm supposed to do. But that's not enough to bring Mashiach. Because in order to bring Mashiach, it requires that every single person does the Aveda. And actually, it's interesting because it shouldn't be a big surprise that the Rebbe said that, because that was actually his opening statement when he became Rebbe. Even before he said the Maimer Basi Lagani, he said in the tradition of the country, we open with a statement, and the statement he made was that I'm not going to do this myself. I will lead you, I will push you, I will pull you, whatever I can do, but it's up to the Chassidim need to do the Aveda. That was the opening statement before even reciting the Maimed Basi Lagani. So, in other words, it's a clear thing that Rebbe is telling us that it is upon us, our job as Yidden and certainly as Chassidim, is every one of us must bring Mashiach. Great, we got to bring Mashiach. First, before we can bring Mashiach, we have to look at what is Mashiach. Many people think of Mashiach as there won't be any war, there won't be, and these are true things. There won't be sickness. He'll come on a white donkey, on a purple eagle, whatever the case may be. These are all the details. What is the definition? What does it mean that Mashiach will be here? If the Rebbe is asking us to bring Mashiach, we need to understand what is this Mashiach that we're supposed to bring. So this brings us to what is actually the only confirmed writing Ksav Yad of the from the Baal Shem Tov. Most of the other things were copies and were transcribed by Chassidim, etc. The Ksav Yad is a letter that he wrote to his brother-in-law Gershon Kitover, and of course, and I'm going to pull it up now. We'll read it, but everybody knows the part of it. And he must say, when will the master come? When your well springs will spread outward. But there's a more detailed explanation there, and let's look at that now. Okay, so this is the intro. In the intro to Kesser Shem Tov, which is a book of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. So he talks about, first I'm going to skim through this part, and I have certain parts highlighted. If you're looking for this, you can go to truekabbalah.org.com. If you look on those books, it's on there. But if you look for the Tzavos HaRivash, there's the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, which is actually not where this is originally printed, but you do have this printed in English. Or if you're looking for the original Hebrew, you can look up on HebrewBooks.org in the introduction to Kesser Shem Tov. So on Rosh Hashanah, he tells his brother-in-law Gershon Kitover, I made an oath and elevated my soul. I went up to the heavens. He talks about the joy that he saw there, the people that he saw there. Ultimately, he ascended. They asked him to go up and go to the highest heaven, to go to the Heichel of Mashiach. And he agreed to go up, and he asked his master and teacher, the prophet Achia Shiloini, to go up with him. He says he never experienced such a thing. And again, we can go into this further, but here's the main part that pertains to what we're looking at. I asked Mashiach, Master, when will you come? And he replied, by this you shall know. It will be at a time when your teachings will become famous and revealed in the world, and your well springs will spread out. That's the part we all know. He goes further. That is what I have taught you and you have grasped, so that they too will be able to affect unifications and ascents like you. And in that time, all the husks of evil, all the klippas will cease, and it will be a time of grace and salvation. So first of all, before we continue the next little part, this is the definition of Mashiach. The definition of Mashiach is when the knowledge of the Eibishter will spread out, and specifically when every Jew can be miyachid yichudim, can affect the unification of Havaya Elikim, like the Baal Shem Tov himself, which of course sounds like a scary idea, and the Baal Shem Tov will go on to say so himself. But that is the definition of Mashiach. When we think of there will be no more war, there won't be the sickness, there won't be all these other things, these are all symptoms of Mashiach. That's not what Mashiach is. If all the world, if every Jew can be miyachid yichudim like the Baal Shem Tov, which means that by their very nature they will teach everybody, all the nations of the world, about the Eibishter as well. How could there be war? How could a whole world of people who believe that Havaya Elikim, the Echad, who is Shmei Levad, how could there be war? Furthermore, if you're the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, You're less worried about the profits, and you're more worried about your mission from the Eibishter to be a pharmaceutical guy. And if you're a fisherman, you're worried about feeding the world because that's your mission from the Eibishter. If you're a Jew, you're worried about learning Torah, learning Chassidus, because that's your mission from the Eibishter. And therefore, naturally, all these other things, they're symptomatic of that. Of course, that's great. That sounds simple, right? When we can all be miyachid yichudim like the Baal Shem Tov. So of course, the Baal Shem Tov continues in his letter. I was bewildered and greatly distressed about the length of time involved. And I asked myself, when could this possibly be? Right? How long could such a thing take? It'll be, can you imagine how long such a thing will take? And he said, however, while I was there, I learned 3 beneficial methods. He calls them segulas. A segula, the way it's usually used, a segula here means a method. And 3 holy names that are easy to learn and explain. My mind was then set at ease, and I thought that with these teachings, the people of my own generation might ascend and learn and attain the same level as me, to be able to ascend, to learn and perceive as I do. However, I was not granted permission to reveal this during my lifetime. I pleaded for your sake, he's telling his brother-in-law, to be allowed to teach you, as Gershon Kitiver was also a great tzaddik. So he thought maybe if he pleads with them, they'll allow him to teach at least him. But I was denied all permission and remained bound by this ban. Okay, now, if we go a couple of lines up, I want to go back to the part. I was not granted permission to reveal this during when? During my lifetime. We know Yutes Kislev is coming up, so if we want to refresh ourselves in the story of Yutes Kislev, who came to visit the Alter Rebbe in his cell? There was 2 people, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. Interestingly, there was a Chassid at one point who was visiting St. Petersburg and was where this jail was, and they knew which cell it was, and the Rebbe actually asked him to ascertain that 3 people could fit in this cell, that 3 people could fit in there, because after all, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid visited him. Okay, the Baal Shem Tov visited the Alter Rebbe when? After his lifetime. He's bound by this ban. During his lifetime, he is not allowed to share it with anybody. When he comes to the Alter Rebbe, when he taught the Alter Rebbe, was after his lifetime. And very interestingly, when you start looking in Torah, you start looking in the Likutei Torah, you start seeing very clearly that he talks about the 3 aspects of Havaya Elikim, and the Havaya Ilah, the upper Havaya, the lower Havaya, and the Elikim. And he talks about, and he also talks about there's 3 different methods in his Beinunus. This is Chassidus. This is the 3 methods and the 3 names that the Baal Shem Tov said. Through these, we can learn to be miyachid yichudim like he did. So, continuing now, we're going to continue to the words of the Alter Rebbe. It's actually as brought down by the Mitteler Rebbe in the introduction of Imre Bina, but the words of the Alter Rebbe. So we established 2 things so far. It's our job to bring Mashiach, and what Mashiach is being able to be miyachid yichudim like the Baal Shem Tov. Now we need to find out what is miyachid yichudim. Luckily for us, the Mitteler Rebbe explains it in the words of his father, the Alter Rebbe. So we'll look now into the introduction of Imre Bina. Okay, so we're gonna it's a long introduction. It's actually been said that it's the Rebbe said this is a worthwhile thing to read, almost like in a book on itself. That just the introduction to Imre Bina is a worthwhile kavitz on its own. But he talks about first about his father, right? The Alter Rebbe, and everything that he did, and all the mamorim that he gave, and the writings and the teachings. So to the highlighted part, all of it was with one intention only, namely to embed the simple oneness of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, meaning the matter of the essential light of the Infinite One, blessed be He, into the minds and hearts of every Jew, according to his capacity and the measure. That everything the Alter Rebbe did was to embed the simple oneness of Havaya into every Yid according to his ability. The very foundation of his words, as apparent from all his written works and many talks, is the matter of the true godly unity of Hashem, which is the matter of the Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata. Just hold those words in your mind until later. So all of this, the oneness, meaning the Yichudim, is what? Is the Yichud of Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata. That's what it means to be miyachid. His name is to put together Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata. You don't have to worry about what that means exactly. All you have to know is that's what unifying Hashem's name means. Indicated by his name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is Yichuda Ilah, and his name Elikim, Yichuda Tata. This okay, we're going to skip a little further here. Again, anybody wants to go and read the thing in its entirety, it's a very good idea, but we have limited time, so I still want to get to going inside in the Shar Yichud, because what we're talking about here is the Mitteler Rebbe is explaining in the words of his father what to be miyachid yichudim means. When we go into the Shar Yichud, and I'm only going to go into one chapter of it, but what I'm looking to show you is how the Shar HaYichud it gives you the ability to do this miyachid yichudim that he's here talking about in the introduction of Imre Bina. So the written and oral Torah and all the mitzvahs are included in the unity of the Holy One, like we said before, that Shema Yisrael, the mitzvah Shema Yisrael, being unifying his name, right, and doing his beinus on his name, it includes all of the Torah and all the mitzvahs included in it. So the written and oral Torah and all the mitzvahs are included in the unity of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His presence in the world, which are the two names Hashem and His title Elikim. These two aspects correspond to the first verse of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's Yichuda Ilah, the upper unity, and the Baruch Shem Kavod is the lower unity. So, which these two are called Yichuda Ilah, Yichuda Tata. So we're going to skip here and go to here. This is to enable the minds and hearts of all who have the capacity to delve into the knowledge of the upper unity, Yichuda Ilah, and the lower unity, Yichuda Tata, of Hashem, each person according to his capacity, during the recitation of the first verse of Shema, to enable us to delve into it during the recitation of the first verse of Shema. That means that when we say Shema, we are to think about the unity of Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata. That's the mitzvah of Shema, is to think about the unity of Hashem and of Avayin Elikim. And during the second verse, Baruch Shem, as we'll see soon from the Mitteler Rebbe inside in chapter 10 of Shar Yichud, that it's actually it doesn't write it there. It's actually in Shulchan Aruch Harav. Is that it's actually in between Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem is when we do that. But let's not jump ahead of ourselves. For this is the essential foundation, right? This delving into this unifying Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata is the essential foundation of all the Torah and the mitzvahs. It is the foundation of prayer, right? Avedas Halev, the service of the heart. And it is also the foundation of faith that transcends knowledge, right? There's a faith that comes from what we know, and there's a faith that's higher than seichel. So this hisbeinus in unifying Hashem's name is the foundation of that faith that transcends knowledge, as is known to all who have tasted the words of the living God with all their heart and soul. You see, I think that was all of the highlighted parts. Oh no, I have more. There we go. No, I have a touchy mouse. Up. Okay. Okay. So this refers to the knowledge of the true reality of his essential self, blessed be he, even though no thought can grasp him. Right? Like we just said, that this is what leads to having faith that's higher than seichel. Nevertheless, in the coming future, in the times of Mashiach, which as we know, the Rebbe said is now, when the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem as the waters cover the ocean floor, right? He will be openly revealed literally, like we said before. All flesh will perceive. Not just all people will perceive, all flesh will perceive that it'll be readily obvious to a person in a body that when they walk outside, that zeh keli van veyu. This and like they say with zeh means them. This means point, like pointing with a finger. They can point with a finger to the Eibishter. Zeh keli van veyu. It should be pointed out that this commandment requires the acquisition of the knowledge of Hashem. In order to do this commandment of Shema Yisrael, you have to have the knowledge of Hashem. For the verse states, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, which is known that we know in Hillel Parashur's explanation to the Shara Yichud, he talks about this, that it's one of the first things, I think he has actually two explanations, Bir Aleph, Bir Beis, and I believe it's Bir Beis that starts out Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and gives this and explains that Shema means that just like Re'ei, see means like with Chachma, it's Shema means to understand with Bina. The primary work, the primary Aveda in fulfilling the mitzvah of reciting Shema is that the power of our faith, which is beyond knowledge, should come to be revealed within our knowledge and understanding. So through our Hizbaininus, our Aveda in our Hizbaininus, in order to understand what we need to know in order to properly accomplish the mitzvah of Shema, we bring that which is higher than Seichel into our Seichel. So this was just the part that I was mentioning before, that he talks about Shema Yisrael being second only to the mitzvah of Emunah. But Emunah is not counted as one of this. Emunah is in fact a mitzvah midiraisa. But like we know, for example, there are certain of the mitzvahs, and it's discussed in Hilchos Eidus in different places, in Shulchan Aruch, where it's a known thing by the Rambam that his klal was that that anything that is derived through the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, right? We know that, like, for example, what we say every morning before Heider Rabbi Shmuel Eimer, right? B'shleish Esrei Midas Ater in the Dreshes, that everything in the Torah is brought out through these 13 different ways, these 13 different methods, right? The Kal V'Cheimer, Gzeir Shava, all these different extrapolations, etc. But the Rambam says that anything that's extrapolated that way is even though it's a mitzvah from the Torah, it's not from he doesn't count it in the 613. Why? Because it's essential and natural to us. As we know, the Alter Rebbe says many places, all the Rebbeim speak about this, that every Jew has an emunah, right? Every Jew has an emunah that they're born with, that's an inheritance from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's it's a natural thing. So how can that be a mitzvah? It's like if he gave us a mitzvah, he gave people a mitzvah to be human. Well, you're human already. What kind of mitzvah is that? A Jew has emunah naturally, so therefore he doesn't count it in the mitzvahs. So therefore, this statement is true, but only in the sense that faith emunah is the foundation of all the commandments are founded upon and sustained by. However, immediately following faith comes the commandment to recite Shema and to contemplate. He's using the best available word he can find in English here, but it's to do his beinanus on the godly unity of Hashem, his Yichuda Ilah and Yichuda Tata, which are the aspects of how our faith will be revealed in the coming future, in the times of Mashiach. That the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem as the waters cover the ocean floor, meaning we will be aware in a tangible way that the life of the world is from the name Hashem, and that which means how Hashem it transcends and is beyond all worlds, but at the same time that he is all worlds. So that's the parts from the, again, if you want to learn the whole introduction to Imre Bina, I mean, honestly, if you want to learn the whole Imre Bina too, for sure. But the introduction specifically is very, very powerful. So it's worth looking into. But the parts that I wanted to highlight there is simply that we know that bringing Mashiach is through unifying Hashem's name, like the Baal Shem Tov taught the Alter Rebbe. What does it mean to unify Hashem's name? It means that during Shema, when we think about the unity of Hashem's name of Yichud Ilon, Yichud Tata, Shema, and Baruch Shem, and this requires, right, like he says in the introduction to Imre Bina, this requires doing a hisbeinenus and understanding Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tata and how they connect to each other, etc. And that is the key, to accomplishing this great mitzvah of Shema Yisrael, which we are all obligated in as a mitzvah, and B, this is the key to bringing Mashiach. So now, where can we find this information? I have an idea. We're going to look at chapter 10 of Sha'ar Yichud, and we're actually going to be going into the same sefer that is the gift. Let me pull it up here, and we're going to go to chapter 10. Okay. Okay, and now we're going to go inside pretty much straight off his words. It doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, but I think it'll be readily apparent that this idea that was spoken about in the introduction of Imre Bina, which this is the way to bring Mashiach, like we said before, is clearly explained. The way how to do this mitzvah, how to accomplish Kriya Shema properly, and furthermore, how to bring Mashiach, how to be able to unify Hashem's name is included in here. Just to give you a quick, being that we're only looking at chapter 10 right now, I'll give you a quick thing. Before chapter 10, he talks a lot about how the Seichel works and how Chacham bin Adas, he gives a lot of background info. He also explains how to do his Beinunus, which is important as well, because there's two things that are, and he actually says it this way in the introduction of Sha'ar Yichud. There are two things that are explained in Sha'ar Yichud: A, how to do his Beinunus, and B, on what to do his Beinunus. So I'm going to go to the latter thing right now to point out that this latter thing of what to do his Beinunus on, what is this thing that we're supposed to do in Kriya Shema, is included in the Sha'ar Yichud. So now we're going to understand. We need to understand in a specific way, and all four worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya. By the way, this is basically, he's almost giving a table of contents. Only he doesn't list it as a table of contents. He does it as text. But essentially he's giving a table of context of everything that's to come. So we have, because later on in other chat he explains in particular what the difference between these worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya. What's the difference? Atzilus is a world that doesn't feel itself, but in Bria it does feel itself. All these different things, they're not yet important. They're not important for the point of this particular discussion to know all that. But so now we need to understand in a specific way the four worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, the specifics of the 10 spheres in all of those four worlds, and how in those spheres there's lights and vessels, and how they enclose it within each other. B'chol pratein, and specifically we need to understand this in a specific way. Gam b'kol spheres shemischalekes leprati pratis, even how each sphere splits down further into more specifics. For example, right? If we work this backwards, it's easier to understand that chesed has a malchus, and that malchus also has a chachma, because each one has 10, and those 10 each have 10, and those 10 each have 10, those 10 each have 10, right? So chesed has a malchus, has a chachma, has a malchus, has a chesed, which is known as chesed the malchus, shebechachma shebemalchus bechesed, right? And by the way, this is why, by the way, Chassidus is not only, right, we know Rabbi Nehiroi Eimer, right, Meniach Anikol Umnisha Elam, the Eini Melamid B'ni El Torah. Right, Rabbi Nehiroi said that I'm putting aside all the wisdom of the world, and I'm only teaching my children Torah. Why? He was a mean person. He didn't want them to make a living. No, he was smart. He realized that anything you can make a living in, mathematics, science, everything is included in Torah. In other words, everything in the world works with a formula. And this is the key formula that includes all those formulas. So, for example, if you have, let's say, chesed of malchus, chacham of chesed of malchus, chesed, whatever it is, that is an apple tree. On the other hand, if you change around the chesed and a malchus or something, that's a pear tree. Now, if you go further down and you split some more spheres off of that, that becomes a specific type of apple tree, and it becomes this specific apple tree. Similarly, in neshamis, right? There's the neshamis that came down. Let's we're gonna make it much shorter than it really is, but let's just say I'm gvura of chesed of malchus. Well, then maybe one of my kids is chesed of gvura of of malchus, etc., etc. This is the whole world is included in here. The inyan yichudam v'skalusam b'chinas hakesher b'chol and how they are included and unified into the crown in each world, right? That we know that all the other spheres are included in the keser. Again, we don't have to understand this specifically right now. The Mitteler Rebbe does explain all of this at further length in Shar Yichud. He's just here giving a synopsis of what's to come. That we know the keser is the middle, the middleman, right? The between the top world and the lower world. That the malchus of the upper world becomes the keser of the lower world, right? Because malchus is expression. Malchus is speech. Malchus is why is it kingship? Because it's like a king. How does a king get things done? He gives out an edict he gives a commandment, right? The guy comes with this big scroll. Hear ye scroll. So this is the malchus. In other words, what's the malchus? What do you mean it's the malchus? It's a scroll with letters on it. That's not the king. But how this is the expression of the king, and that's how the king expresses himself to the generals and to the people and to etc., that his will be done. The kester is the crown, is how the level below receives from that the malchus. And then, of course, let's say the kester, the crown of the general, receives from the king a command: go take over this country. He then, in turn, there comes a malchus from the general, where he speaks or sends a letter to his colonels or whoever comes next. I have to look on the Tzivus Hashem map to see what the next after the general is, but and then in turn that colonel receives with his keser, and in turn gives over from his malchus, and this is so too in every single level. The malchus, the upper one, becomes the crown of the lower one. Adrema Milas, going all the way up to the highest levels. By the way, just before I continue, I think you can see already that this is a very, very beautiful tool. The way it's interlinear here, and it has amazing footnotes in the bottom that explain a lot of, because usually when you learn this, there's some of these footnotes and things that you would have to know, so they really brought in a lot of very amazing information that helps understand the background of it. So it's really an amazing sefer. So that is Yichud Tata he was talking about, which will all be explained in Shar Yichud. And as you recall, what are the two things you need to understand to be miyached the Eibishter's name like that, like the Baal Shem Tov did? You need to understand Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tata. We just spoke about the Yichud Tata. He didn't explain it yet. He said that's coming up. However, first, the kol misbainin lihizbainim. Every single person who's coming to do his bainanus must first do his bainanus the makir harishan on the first source, hanikra mekeda dekula, which is called the source of everything. Shehu b'chinas atzmos eida ein sof, that this is the atzmos, the self of the light of the infinite one. Shelifnei hatzimtzum, that's before the contraction. Hanikra makom ponu yanal, which this tzimtzum is called the empty space, as mentioned above. This is in the earlier chapters. Gam shom derech prat dafke. Don't think that we have to understand just the created world, Atzilus Bria Tzir Asiya, in a specific way. We have to also understand, we have to contemplate, we have to do his bainanus, on Yichud Ilah, on Atzmos, also in a specific way. Now here's the interesting part. V'hu hanikra mayrich be'echad. And this is called elongating the one, as in Shema Yisrael Hashem Likenu Hashem Echad, that it says that anybody who elongates the one is guaranteed Elam Haba. And by the way, like we know, there's the Maimed from Tov Shin Mem Vav, I think, 1986. I think it was Shabbos Mevarchim of, maybe it was somewhere in that area. That there's the Maimer Lahavin Inyan Chias Amesim, to understand the idea of the rising of the dead, where the Rebbe explains the difference between that Elam Haba, right? That Elam Haba sometimes used to mean Gan Eden, so people take this to mean that Kol HaMayrich Be'echad, anybody who elongates the one, right? That they merit to Elam Haba, meaning Gan Eden. And he says, no, it's talking about they merit to Elam Haba, to Tchias Amesim, to the times of Mashiach, that through being Mayrich Be'echad, that's how we bring the times of Mashiach. That's the 1986 at Toshmem Vav, I think it was Shabbos Mevarchim of. So Vahu Nikra Mayrich Be'echad, this is what's called elongating the one, but Achdus Hapshuta Davka, with a simple unity specifically. So he's telling you now what he's teaching here. He's teaching you how to be Mayrich Be'echad, how to unify the Eibishter's name in saying Shema. And actually, what's interesting too is that according to the Alter Rebbe, some people, what they do is therefore they say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? They make it long. The Alter Rebbe specifically says we're not supposed to make the letter long. We're not supposed to say a long Echad. The proper way, because you're messing up the diktuk, you're messing up the proper grammar of it. You're making it have a different. So the Alter Rebbe actually says that the proper meaning is you say Shema Yisrael. It's actually you're supposed to be a pause between Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then if you noticed, sometimes the Chassidim don't keep their you have to keep your, but many Chassidim they'll still have their hands over their eyes for whatever it is, 20 seconds, 30 seconds before they say Baruch Shem. And that's how Mayrich Be'echad is when you finish the word Echad, you're supposed to, not that you elongate the word, you elongate in your thinking about it. And by the way, I can tell you that I grew up as a little kid. I grew up next to Rabbi Reichik, Shmuel David Reichik, Shadar. And who was, and I remember his davening. He was, I don't know how he got anything done, quite frankly speaking, because he was in his talus and film all day. And as a kid, I would play around in the shul next to him, especially on Sundays and things like this. My father was an administrator in the same Chabad house. And so he would bring it. So that was what we did for fun on Sunday. Now these kids need to go to laser tag and I don't know what. Back then, for fun, we went to Chabad house and we ran around. I almost once lit Rabbi Reichik on fire, but we won't talk about that. There was a Gvir, Beryl Weiss. It's I said before that if Farbrengen isn't about fun stories and memories, but it's okay to include them also a little bit. Beryl Weiss was a very famous Gvir who supported a lot of Chabad Mejdes. And he would light candles every day for all the tzaddikim. He had the book of tzaddikim whose yahrzeit it was, and he would light a candle, and he attributed his wealth to this practice. If anybody who watches the Gem videos, he's the one who he has the video about that. He asked the Rebbe that he should become a lamdin without losing his wealth. So the wealth he attributed to the candles, but the Rebbe told him you have to grow a beard. Many times told him, and finally that's why he grew a beard because the Rebbe told him if you want to be a lamdin and also retain your wealth, you have to grow a beard. So he had a lot of candles. Well, as a kid, it was very fun to make bridges out of the wax and things like this. And one time, this whole thing shot up on fire. Luckily, my father from the office, I was in the shul. There was, by the way, for years, there was a big black mark on the drop ceiling over there. That there was, my father smelled something from the office. He came running out. He grabbed the fire extinguisher, put it out. Rabbi Reichik was like, they have like those shul folding tables. So there was two of them. One, it was on the edge of one of them, and then Rabbi Reichik was on the edge of they were put like this together. And the thing was here, the candles, and he was right there davening. He didn't know that the fire was there. He didn't know that it came. He didn't know that it went. He didn't know that a bunch of that the white fire extinguisher dust was being sprayed all over the place. He didn't hear my father yelling at me. You're burning down the whole shul. None of that. He didn't hear any of that. And when he was Mayrich Be'echad, his pause between Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem, I have no idea how long it took. It was longer than the 20 seconds, 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes that we do. He pushed sat and unified the Eibishter's name. But this here is the information. So that's what Mayrich Be'echad means. And how do we do it? Through this hisbeinus that we're talking about now. So now he says, with a simple unity. We have a little more time, so we'll go a little bit further into this. This is really the main point. This is what I wanted to show you more than anything, is that the Sha'ar Yichud and Mitteler Rebbe. And before, the truth is, if you're going to pick up a copy of the Sha'ar Yichud and you're going to expect to really make sense of it, it required a very big breaking of teeth. Or required having a Rabbi Markel and a Benji Walters and you know what I mean, having a chavrusa like that. And actually, it's interesting because that, you know, the brown and gray, the Kabbalah packet, that's actually the work of my father and Benjamin Walters, the one that you said your husband when he was a bacher, when they had that one, yeah. And I have only a little small part. There's the Mendel series, which is a little tiny part, Mill Parcher. That's all I have in there. But nowadays, I mean, look at this right here. It's all open. Anybody, you can read it in Hebrew, in English, in Hebrew and English. There's footnotes. This is pashut. The ability to read, to understand, to read the Sha'ar Yichud is readily open right here for everybody. There's no there's no reason anybody can't do this now, which is interesting because this is what the Baal Shem Tov said, is that when in those times everybody will have this ability. Right, everyone will have this ability to do the hisbeinus, to be able to unify his name. So this is really something that's mamish available now, that pushed everybody could do, and it's really, in a sense, you can say it's a mitzvah for everybody to learn this. And by the way, this is a big help because not just in the basic concepts, because I can tell you, learning Torah, learning Likutei Torah. I'm going to stop the share for a second. But learning Likutei Torah, learning Torah, if anybody's familiar with these, the Alter Rebbe, the way he talks, is he says XYZ kayadua, XYZ kayadua, XYZ v'chulu, XYZ v'chulu, XYZ v'geimer, XYZ v'chulu, which means as is known, etc., as is known, etc. And he's expecting, because like he'll say, for example, you know, for example, that the Eibishter, this is along the lines of how the Eibishter made an engraving in the upper purity, as is known. Really, anybody ever heard about that from? I don't know. You know, from it's not in the Uncle Moshe music. I mean, it actually probably is in a hidden way, but but the way you can understand, it's not in the Uncle Moshe tapes. What do you mean, as is known? Where do we know this from? And if you look over here, towards the end of chapter 10, he actually Mamish goes into this. You know, for example, Yochid, Echad, and Kadmin, the three different aspects of Ein Sof, which the Alter Rebbe says as is known. And by the way, the same thing goes. People say, "Oh, learn Samach Vav, learn Ein Beis." I agree. Take, learn Ein Beis, learn Samach Vav. But good luck understanding Samach Vav and Ayin Beis when he comes to his etc.s, and we don't know the concept his etc.s talking about. You know, the Rebbe Rashab will say, you know, who Kadmin will talk about the Chafetz Chesed, the Eibishter's essence, desire to do good. Okay, well, Kayadua, as is known. So in here, all of these things are let's see over here, law. Right, and he explains what the law is. There's galus eratz musik k'meishu dafka, the way Hashem's light is revealed specifically as it is, and this is called Yachid. And this is, for example, if we read Pasach Eliyahu right before Mincha on Erev Shabbos, Antu chad v'lo b'chushbon, you are one and not an account. What does that mean? Yud, you're not an account of 10. You don't have 10 spheres. All of a sudden, it opens up all the tefillis. This opens up all the mamarim. Here you have also, I think it's a little further down in chapter 10. But yeah, here we have here, Bereish Hurmra de Malka, Glifu B'Tehira. In the beginning of the Nezayar, it says in the beginning of the rule of the king, he engraving the Tehira. Okay, this is something that comes repeatedly in Torah and Likutei Torah, which, by the way, are amazing things. Likutei Torah and Torah, Samach Vav, all these things. One mimer can literally change your life. One mimer can literally change your life, and I speak from experience. I've had many mimer that, like, totally everything that you saw, that you thought you knew before, and even to those who not even to us that we know Eibishter, all of a sudden you know a whole different Eibishter, and you realize I thought I knew about the Eibishter, and over these Mamarim can do it, but only if we understand the concepts that they're talking about. So here's the Gliful. We have where he, and you can see here it's explained. He explains what the Gliful is. On the Emleich is another thing that comes in Chassidus very much, right? Which in Mamarim it just says as we know the on the Emleich, as if we're supposed to know what the on the Emleich is, that I will rule. This is explained in the Sha'ar Yichud. Again, the same thing. And I mean, we can go on and on and on, but this is the basic idea here. Is that, in other words, very simple. I went to a professor and I told him I want to learn advanced mathematics, and he told me, "Did you learn mathematics 101?" I said, "No, I don't want to learn mathematics 101. I want to learn advanced mathematics. I just want to know all the most advanced concepts." So what's he going to tell me? He's going to say, "You're a Meshuggah." What do you mean you want to know the advanced concepts? You got to know the 101. Now, of course, he's going to appreciate that I want to know the advanced concepts, but you're going to say, "Hang on a second. If you want to understand the advanced concepts, not only that, if you want to know them properly and not make a mistake with them in your calculations later, the stronger your math 101 is, the stronger is going to be your calculations later when you're in the advanced." The same thing goes for all the mamarim of all the Rabbeim. If we're to understand the mamarim of the Rabbeim and get their fullest impact and really allow them to change our lives, we have to first have the 101. So this is the Sha'ar Yichud of the Mitteler Rebbe. That's the 101, and it's a Zman Segula to bring that up, as we know that at Tzaddik his birthday is a Zman Segula for the things that, for his Aveda, for the things that he brought down to this world. His Yartzeit is also a Zman Segula. And as we know that also a Yema Geula, when the Rebbeim would be imprisoned, it wasn't the imprisonment down here was a reflection of a kitrug, of a challenge upstairs. Is the world ready for this? Why are you sharing this? And the fact that he's let out is shows that in the heavenly court they were masking. They agreed. You can let this out. You can spread this. Here we have coming up Tes and Yud Kislev. We have the Tes, also his birthday, also his Yartzeit, followed by the next day his Chag HaGeula. So this is a especially opportune time to start delving in this, which we know that the Rebbe called this the Mafteach to Chassidus, the key to Chassidus, because without these concepts we can't properly understand Chassidus. So anyway, I hope maybe a little bit I've interested you in, especially now that we see this beautiful book that anybody can learn from. Hopefully I've interested you a little bit in starting if you don't already, starting, and if you do already, continuing and strengthening the learning of the basics of Chassidus, the basic Hizbaininus that is required to fulfill the mitzvah Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and by extension is required to bring Mashiach. That Mashiach is the time when we will be able to unify His name, which this is Umala Aris Deya Savaya. L'chaim l'bracha.
L'chaim, thank you so much. Wow, you really brought such a rich, from all places and source. Then that was really, really, really powerful. So thank you very much.
And you can see also clearly. I'm very careful that first of all, I can't take credit for these ideas. They're not my ideas, but I like to be careful to also. Therefore, this is why I like the screen share, is you can go inside. Anybody can pick up this. You can pick up the Hagdama to Imre Bina and see it for yourself, as well as I think that's translated. Shimon translated that one also, and all these things. The Sha'ar Yichud, the letter from the Baal Shem Tov, certainly the Sikha from Chav Chasivon. You can read it for yourself. Not one of these is my personal idea. It's just a collection of ideas, all from the Rabbeim. And so take it as that. Like I said before, there's my personal ideas. I have many personal ideas. Don't get me wrong, but they're not worth changing your perspective over. Is just the matter. But these are the ideas of the Rabbeim that they showed us how to bring Mashiach. When the Rebbe told us, "I'm giving it over to you to bring Mashiach," he didn't just, "I'm giving it over to you." He gave us all the tools to go along with it. So Mir Hashem, hopefully everybody will pick up these tools and start doing his beinanus, and start maybe in between Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem, take those 30 seconds, take those 60 seconds, keep your hand over your eyes, and like the Alter Rebbe said, that it's each person according to where you're holding it. Like don't think your Ma'arich Be'echad has to be the same as each of the Masmid, the Zalman Zezmid, somebody else's. Adarabah, the reason the Eibusher sent your soul down here is because he wants your soul to be Ma'arich Be'echad to bring Mashiach. That's why you're here right now. So hopefully everybody will continue and strengthen, or if they haven't yet, so start on that journey of his beinanus and of the journey towards being miyachid yichudim like the Baal Shem Tov, each according to their own capability.
Amen, amen. And just to clarify, everyone can find all of these farm and all these translations on truekabbalah.com. So it's TRUEKABBALAH.com.
Correct. Besides, for the first one was the Sikha from Kayach Nisan, but if you look up Kayach Nisan 5751, and it's both in English and Hebrew, it's very easy to find online.
Right.
So
Okay.
everything else you can find. In fact, what was the Shar Yichud, Imrei Bina, and the letter? All three other texts that were shared on my screen are from are downloads from truekabbalah.com. So.
Beautiful. Perfect. Okay, so now that we all have homework to do, I was wondering, we have, in the meantime, we have a tradition where we take a Zoom selfie. Are you okay if we do a screenshot with
Absolutely.
with our speaker?
I'm not sure what it involves, but I'm not. You may have suspected. I'm not super camera shy.
I appreciate that. So basically, everyone's invited. If you'd like to turn on your video, and Bracha will let us know when she's ready. And all we have to do is just smile, and Bracha says smile.
Okay, everybody's ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, got it.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Markel. You should have a lot of atzlacha in your shlichus and your personal learning, and in spreading it out to all of us. So thank you. We really appreciate
thank you so much, and thank you for this chus. It's really a joy, and anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good Yom Tov.